Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It is June 1st, so that means May is totally wrapped up. So I thought I would stop in for just a few minutes and give you guys an update on what all I read in May and what I think I plan to read in June. Before I get started, there is something I need to address. We have a new sticker and it is very disturbing. So if you are easily terrified by just haunting images, then I suggest you turn away now. The new sticker is a photograph of my knee. I have really weird knees. I've always had terrible knees. And apparently they look like a demon-possessed baby is trying to escape. Like, if that doesn't haunt your nightmares, I don't know what will. Anyway, this was so kindly pointed out to me by my hilarious friend, Loco. And being the funny guy he is, he sent me a sticker of my knee. And you guys, like, I can't even tell you how hard I laughed when this came in the mail. You have to be able to laugh at yourself, and this will keep me laughing at myself for the rest of my life, I think. So thank you, Eric. It is hilarious, and I apologize to everyone who has to look at my clipboard from here on out, because there she is. So anyway, let's get started. In May, I did read 8 books. And I don't know if you know this, but I was really getting super exhausted by my TBR, which was totally self-imposed. The whole reading schedule, nobody made me feel like I had to do that. I just kind of put that on myself. And I had this pretty, planned out reading schedule that kind of started feeling like it was bogging me down. So my plan for May was just to read whatever I wanted. Like when I finished a book, I was just going to pick up something that sounded good after that and have no real direction for the month. And honestly, it was a ton of fun, and I think it really increased my productivity levels. So other than this first book I'm going to show you, which is Memories of Ice, book 3 of Malazan Book of the Fallen, that is part of a read-along that I'm sticking with. Other than that book, everything I picked up was just kind of on a whim because I wanted to. So let's talk about Memories of Ice first. It's really no secret. Like, I struggled with this book. I'm going to go as far as to say that I don't think I even really liked it. But I think a lot of that has to do with the way I read it. So there is a read-along happening on Mike's Book Reviews Discord channel. And in that read-along, we're reading about a book every 2 months. And this was technically started by the read-along in April. We had all of April and all of May to read this book. And because I tend to be somewhat of a procrastinator, I did not pick it up in May. So don't listen to me. I don't even know what month it is. I did not pick it up in April. So when May came along, I already kind of felt like I was behind a little bit. And I decided to, rather than just sit down and read this book, I decided to say, you know what, I'm just going to read a chunk of it every day. Like, I'll read 50 pages a day. And then I'll also have a fun book on the side. Well, here's what happens. A little psychology for you. When you deem something as not fun, like if you call something fun and then something not fun, you're going to end up dreading it. Like, this could have been a really good book. For all I know, it was a good book. But because I mentally set myself up that this was the chore and everything else was like a reward when I got finished with my daily stipend of, Memories of Ice. When you set yourself up like that and treat something like a chore and everything else is like what you get to do after you finish your chore, you're probably not going to enjoy it very much. And the thing is, I didn't. And I'm having a hard time even deciding if I really didn't like the book or if I just kind of set it up to where I was going to dread it every time I picked it up, which is what ended up happening. Now, there were good things about this book. There were some amazing moments, some characters that kind of pulled out as front runners in the series for me, some developments that are quite interesting, and I continued to be very, very, very just blown away and impressed at the huge scope of this world and how he's introducing ideas and just things I didn't even know you could do in fantasy or in books. So I'm very impressed by the story still. And I'm in it. like I'm not quitting the series, and I finished the book and I'm ready to, you know, just move on and talk about other things. And I hope, like everyone says, that with some, you know, after a couple more books and maybe a little bit of a retrospective, I end up appreciating the book more than I did. So like I said, at this point, I still don't even know if it's the book's fault, like it just wasn't a book I liked, or if I set myself up for failure by treating it like a chore. So anyway, I'm going to talk here in a minute about how I hope to fix that moving forward. But either way, I read that book in May and it's finished now. Another book I read, and by the way, these aren't in any particular order. I just stacked them all up and I'm going to talk about them. Another book I read was Carrie by Stephen King. I read this one on the beach, which I shouldn't take books on the beach because it's now water damaged and full of sand actually. But I read this book on the beach and it was a nice quick read. I think it's about 300 pages. So just in a couple of days, I was able to take this in on the beach. And it was a good book for the beach because it is a little bit dark, but at the same time, because I already knew the story from the movie and just the story's reputation, I didn't have to exert way too much brain power while reading it. It was just a really fun read. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Something else I read was Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. And I'm going to have a hard time picking my favorite book for the month because I've read, as I'm about to show you, some really, really excellent books. And man, I've been anticipating this book for so long and it didn't disappoint at all. So this is a new release. It was released on May 6th. John Gwynne is one of my very favorite living authors. He is an instant read for me. Anything he puts out, you don't have to twist my arm or convince me. I'm going to read it. And this book did not disappoint me at all. So this is book one of a brand new series in a brand new world. So we know I'm a big fan of John Gwynne and his Faithful and the Fallen series. And that has two separate series within the same world. This is a completely different world. So, of course, I absolutely recommend picking up those books. They're favorites of mine. I recommend them to everyone. But if you're looking for something that has maybe a not such a traditional fantasy setting, like this has much more of a Vikings feel. So less kings and queens and castles and more, you know, ships and jarls and, you know, cool Viking dudes. This has a very different setting, but it is full of really unique ideas. And he always does a great job of bringing in really interesting magic and fantastic creatures. And it's tons of magic. I love magic, and this book had a lot of magic. So 2 thumbs up, major recommendation from me. The other book I read is Hyperion. So this is the omnibus. It does have 2 books in it. So it wasn't quite this thick. It was this thick. But I read Hyperion, which is a sci-fi novel by Dan Simmons, and I loved it. Like, this is probably going to be my favorite book of the month because this might be one of my favorite books I've ever read. Like, this is probably going to end up in some sort of a top 10, top 20 list for me. I'm still letting it sink in. I'm still thinking about it. But man, I absolutely loved this book. I loved the storytelling format. And I don't know, it was just pretty impactful. And I found myself just really enjoying every moment of it. Now, I am trying to read along with Mike and do a Michael Crichton book each month. So I have this nice omnibus here that has Congo, Sphere, and Eaters of the Dead. And this month in May, I read Eaters of the Dead. Now, this was previously a DNF for me. I tried to read it last summer, and it just didn't click with me. I don't know if I didn't like it or if I just wasn't in the mood for it, but I probably only read like 30 pages of it last year, and I decided to set it down for a while. But I read it again. I started it again in May, and I don't know what was wrong with me last year because I loved it this year. Again, a very unique storytelling format, but I just found the characters really interesting. I loved the story of the adventure, and it was a little bit kind of scary, kind of creepy, but also just like really rich as you learned about these different cultures as the storyteller was learning as well. So I had a lot of fun with that, and I'm really glad I read it. And then the other thing I started this month, I keep saying this month, you know, I meant May. I have started Raya Revelations and I love it so much. So I don't know if you're familiar with how these books are formatted, but this book, Theft of Swords, is actually a volume of books. So it has 2 books in it, The Crown Conspiracy and Avon Partha. So 2 full novels are in this volume. I read both of those. And then in this volume, it's called Rise of Empire. I read the first book. So the first book of this volume is book 3 of the series, if that makes sense. And it was called Nifron Rising. So I read 3 Raya Revelations books in May. And I just can't tell you how much I'm liking this series. It's just an awesome breath of fresh air. A lot of what I've been reading and what I enjoy reading is pretty heavy. And these, I don't want to call them palate cleansers or fun in a sense that someone might assume I mean that they're just like bubblegum books. They're very good books. They have well-written characters. There's very rich history and lore, really cool religion, and the world is just well-crafted. It has what I'm looking for when I read fantasy, but it also is great banter and what's the word I'm looking for? Just the way that the characters communicate with each other feels very real and natural, but it's also like lighthearted and funny at times. It has one of the best friendships between Hadrian and Royce that I've ever read, and I am a sucker for a good well-written bromance or friendship in fantasy. And anyway, there's everything you love about traditional fantasy, like everything that feels classic about fantasy, but it also feels really fresh and like there's just a fun twist on what you expect. So I read 3 of those out of the 6, and I hope to read the other 3 next month. But anyway, that's what I read this month. Memories of Ice, Carrie, Hyperion, The Shadow of the Gods, Eaters of the Dead, The Crown Conspiracy, Avon Partha, and Nifron Rising. So 8 books in May, and I'm going to go ahead and give the winner, my favorite book I read in May, to Hyperion. But honestly, The Shadow of the Gods, I could talk myself into picking that one, and I could talk myself into picking Raya Revelations as a whole, just because it's been so captivating and so fun for me. But when I look back in, a month, a year, or 30 years, I'm never going to forget this book. Like I said, I think it's going to go down as an all-time favorite. And so I feel pretty comfortable calling this the best book I read in May. Okay, now for June, I am going to continue with this freeing concept I have of relinquishing the book schedule and the TBR and just reading what I want to read. I am participating in 2 read-alongs though that are developing in June. I'm going to continue with Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is book 4, House of Chains. And today is June 1st, and today is the day that I start this. So I am actually very excited about reading this because for the second time, I will be reading with the group. We'll all be starting on the same day. That happened with book 1, Gardens of the Moon. And then the last 2 books, or the 2 that followed that, Dead House Gates and Memories of Ice, I kind of read them during the allotted time, but on my own. And I feel like that affected my enjoyment. Like, I think I like reading books like this with a group. So not only am I going to start it today, along with everybody else in the read-along, but I'm also going to do my very best to read this book solo. So I'm not going to pair it with a fun book. And hopefully that'll make this feel like a fun book. And I just want to give it all my attention. And so I do think it's going to take me quite a while. This book is over 1,000 pages. And as I'm sure you know by the reputation Malazan has, it's heavy. It's not smart to pair this with a bunch of other stuff. At least for me, I had a hard time doing that with Memories of Ice, and I don't want to do it again because I don't want to start to resent the series or get a bad attitude about it or anything like that. I really do want to enjoy it. So my plan is to solo read House of Chains, and given its size and how I'm slower to digest these stories, I imagine it will take me 2 full weeks. So it's kind of nice that I've abandoned the TBR because that leaves me plenty of time to read the other things I want to read in the month. And one of those is Poppy War. This book has been on my radar and on my TBR books I really want to read since 2019. And I think it came out in 2018. So it was pretty much hot on the heels of its release. I knew I wanted to read this book. So I plan to read this in June. I don't honestly know a ton about this except for that it is influenced by Asian culture and that it's very, very dark. I think it is actually considered grimdark. I know people love to bicker about subgenres and what's considered grimdark, but I do think this is intended to be a grimdark book. And I'm excited for it. Like I said, I've been anticipating it for a long time. And Mike and a bunch of other people on his Discord are going to be reading this in June. And so I was going to start it in April, but I thought it's always more fun to read books with friends. So I put it off until this month and I'm going to read it with those guys. So I'm really excited about that. And then afterwards, I imagine I'll have about a week left, and I hope to finish up the Raya Revelations. So like I said, in that volume 2, I do have one more book to read. It's called Emerald Storm, I believe. And then this last volume has 2 books in it, and they are called Wintertide and Preciplicus, I believe. Yes. So there are 2 books in this volume. And like I said, I'm not going to be overly ambitious. My main focus for the month will be House of Chains and Poppy War. But I imagine after I finish those, I'll have a little bit more time. And I'm not in a rush. There's no race. I don't get extra points for reading more books in the month. So after I read House of Chains and Poppy War, I just plan to jump back into Raya Revelations. But since I am not holding myself to anything, if I don't feel like reading Raya Revelations after Poppy War, then who knows what I'll read. I have some Star Wars books I'm excited to catch up on. I still need to read Assassin's Quest. I'm really excited to read Demon in White by Christopher Ruocchio. So all of these things are on my radar. It'll just totally depend on my mood afterwards. So that is the plans. That's what I read in May. And I would love for you guys to drop into the comments and let me know what was the best book you read in May and what are you most excited about for June. So have a great day and thanks for watching.